My daughter looked me dead in the eyes and said, "You know what the best birthday gift would be? If you just died." Behind her, the legal folder I gave her lay torn on the kitchen counter, ripped in half like I never mattered. That moment didn't break me. It rewrote me. Before we continue, please subscribe to the channel, and tell me in the comments, where you're watching from right now. The coffee mug trembled slightly in my grip, not from age, but from something I couldn't name yet. The kettle hissed as usual. The wind tapped gently against the kitchen window. And yet, everything felt off, like walking into a house you thought was yours and finding the furniture slightly rearranged. I sat in my usual chair, right by the window, where the sun came in just right around 7:40 a.m. The old wooden mug stand beside the sink still held Martha's favorite one, "World's Best Listener." No one ever used it after her. The smell of overbrewed coffee drifted up, bitter and sharp. I didn't remember leaving the pot on that long. I reached for the morning newspaper. It was already opened, to the classifieds. And the way it was folded, neatly, aggressively, wasn't my way. My hands always left a soft curve at the corners. This looked like someone had ironed it flat in frustration. Outside, the street looked the same. Mr. Jenkins walked his little terrier like clockwork. But his wave felt tentative. He hesitated a moment too long before smiling. That man never hesitated. Then I noticed it. The folder. The same legal folder my son-in-law had placed on my mantel a week ago during that strange dinner. Except now, it was missing. Not vanished. Moved. I found it inside the kitchen drawer. Hidden under a stack of napkins. As if someone tried to tuck it out of sight, but not far enough. I stood there, my hand on the handle, heart ticking slow and hard. That folder held the deed to this house. Not copies. The originals. "Morning," came a voice behind me. My daughter. Amanda. She didn't look at me. She walked straight to the fridge, took out almond milk, and poured it into a glass like she was on autopilot. No hello. No smile. Just routine. Her husband, Derek, followed moments later, adjusting his tie with the same smugness that had slowly settled into his face over the last month. "Dad, we're late for the bank meeting," he said casually, brushing crumbs off the counter. "You gonna move your car?" I blinked. "What bank meeting?" He laughed, but it wasn't amusement, it was the kind of laugh you give someone slow to catch up. "You signed the consent form, remember? For the joint equity restructuring?" I signed nothing. His smile faded for a second. "Check the folder, then." That's when I knew. His eyes flicked toward the drawer. He knew where it was. He had moved it. Not Amanda. They both paused. Just for a second. But it was enough. I didn't say a word. I just walked over, pulled the folder out, and laid it on the table. Amanda finally looked up. "Dad," she said, too gently. "Don't make this dramatic. It's just a legal adjustment. For efficiency." I didn't answer. I opened the folder. And saw a new document. A form I'd never seen before. Blank signature line, mine. But a post-it note attached, "Signed today. Derek will explain." I turned to them. "This house is in my name," I said flatly. "Exactly," Derek replied, stepping closer. "That's the problem. It should be in ours." A long silence followed. The kettle had stopped hissing. The clock had stopped ticking. I could hear the hum of the refrigerator. Then Amanda spoke. Not gently this time. "You've had enough years, Dad. Don't you think it's time you pass things on?" Pass things on. Like I was a retired heirloom. I looked at the mug on the counter, "World's Best Listener." Still untouched since Martha died. "You two discussed this without me?" I asked, voice low. Amanda shrugged. You never understand this stuff. You always say no. I say no, I echoed, because you never ask. You assume. Derek folded his arms. We didn't want to pressure you. But you've been living here rent-free. That's when the mug slipped from my fingers. Not dropped. Not thrown. Just, let go. It shattered on the tile. Amanda gasped. Derek didn't flinch. I bent slowly, picked up a sharp edge, then set it on the counter with care. They watched me as if unsure whether I'd lost my mind. I built this house, I said quietly. With Martha. Board by board. Tile by tile. That corner was her reading chair. That wall, her painting spot. You think it's just property. You're being sentimental, Derek said, exasperated. Amanda said nothing. She had started looking at the clock. I'll move the car, I said. I left the folder right there on the table. Walked out the door. But I didn't go to the driveway. I walked around the block. Past Mr. Jenkins. Past the mailbox. Past the corner where Martha once planted tulips. And then I stopped. Because for the first time, I realized something. The house wasn't quiet because of peace. It was quiet because respect had left. And all that remained were empty sounds. I walked back in. Derek and Amanda had already left. The folder was gone from the table. Only a faint coffee stain remained. And the shards of the mug on the counter. I swept them into my palm, held the largest piece up to the light. The word "best" still visible. And I knew, as I placed it inside the drawer beside the napkins and closed it. This silence wasn't mine anymore. It belonged to someone else. But not for long. The dishwasher door slammed harder than necessary. I was rinsing a plate when I heard it, and the sound jolted my spine like a slap on the back of the head. Derek stood behind me, arms crossed, jaw tight. Amanda was stirring something on the stove, eyes fixed straight ahead. He didn't bother to lower his voice. Do you always breathe this loud? I turned off the faucet. Water still dripped from my hands. Excuse me? I asked, slow and calm. He smirked. Just saying. Every night we hear your coughs. Your footsteps. The TV. It's like living in a retirement home. Amanda didn't say a word. I reached for a towel, wiped my hands, and looked at him. You know what's louder than footsteps? Entitlement. He shrugged. Call it what you want. We're just trying to make space for our life. My daughter spoke, finally. Dad, we've been meaning to talk to you. There it was. I'd felt it brewing. Like bad weather. Like mold under paint. She turned off the burner, faced me fully now. You've been here 6 months. You said it would be temporary. I nodded. Because I sold my shop to help cover your down payment. That was appreciated, Derek cut in. But now we're juggling mortgage, future planning, and we need room to grow. You mean room without me? Amanda flinched slightly but didn't deny it. We love you, she said. But maybe it's time you considered a facility. Or a senior apartment. A facility? I said. Something quieter, she added quickly. Peaceful. Where I can breathe quieter? I snapped. Derek scoffed and walked away, muttering, Jesus, even now he's playing victim. And that's when it clicked. This wasn't about noise. Or space. It was about legacy. They wanted the house. The assets. The folder. I went to my room, closed the door, sat on the bed. The folder wasn't in the drawer anymore. I found it in Derek's briefcase later that night, unzipped, the trust documents exposed like raw nerves. He didn't even try to hide it. The next morning, I walked to church like I always did. Small town routine. Same pew. Same hymns. Same small nods from neighbors who knew me as Martha's husband or Amanda's dad. But the greetings felt thinner. Mrs. Caldwell, who once gave me her famous cranberry bread every Christmas, barely made eye contact. Brother Harris, who used to shake my hand with both palms, only waved distantly. I knew something had changed. It was confirmed when Pastor Rick called me into his office after the service. "Mind sitting a moment, brother?" he asked, gesturing to the leather chair. Of course. He looked uneasy. Folded hands. A breath too long before speaking. "Your daughter and son-in-law, they came by this week. Asked about our senior outreach. Said you might be needing assistance soon." I blinked. "Assistance?" He nodded. "Said you were confused lately. Misplacing things. Mentioned concerns about your legal responsibilities." I stared at the floor. The edge of the rug was frayed. "I built a cabinet with your father back in '78, I said quietly. Pastor Rick frowned, unsure where I was going. "He taught me to sand with the grain. Never against it. Said rushing ruins everything." "I remember him saying that," Rick murmured. I looked up. "What do you think I'm doing now? Rushing? Or being erased?" He didn't answer. But his eyes softened. When I got home, Amanda was on the porch, talking on the phone. I caught the tail end. "He's too stubborn. But Derek's talking to someone about power of attorney. If Dad pushes back, we'll deal with it." She turned and saw me. Didn't hang up. Just said, "I'll call you back," and slipped the phone into her hoodie. "Enjoy service?" she asked. I walked past her. Didn't say a word. In the kitchen, the folder was on the table. A post-it note again. "Please sign by Monday." Monday. 3 days. 3 days to choose between silence and war. 3 days before they tried to legally erase me from the life I built. The folder sat there like a brick. Like a threat with a paperclip. That night, I heard them whispering in their bedroom. "Derek, he's dead weight. Amanda, don't call him that. Derek, then stop treating him like he matters." And then silence. Until Amanda said something I'll never forget. Soft. Like a dagger dipped in honey. "Maybe we should have let him move in with Aunt Renee." Aunt Renee. The woman who used to beat her own son for chewing gum too loud. That's where they wanted to send me? I stayed up all night. Didn't sleep. Just stared at that folder. By morning, I made coffee. Used the broken mug. Or what was left of it. Glued the top back on, even if it leaked. Because some things don't need to hold liquid to hold meaning. As I poured the coffee, I made a decision: I wouldn't leave quietly. But I wouldn't fight loud either. I'd let the paper do the talking. Starting with what they didn't know was missing. It was Amanda who brought it up again. Not Derek. Not this time. We were sitting in the living room, me on the recliner they now called "in the way," her curled up on the couch with a planner in her lap, pen tapping like a ticking clock. "Dad," she said gently, "can we go over a couple things? Just real quick." I looked over the rim of my glasses. Her voice was too smooth. Too calm. Like a nurse asking you to breathe right before the needle. She pulled out the folder. The folder. Legal blue, creased now, but still whole. "Derek and I did a little organizing," she said. "We cleaned up the paperwork, reordered some of the old forms. It's just easier now." I didn't say a word. Just waited. She opened it in her lap, facing me like a teacher walking through a lesson. Inside, everything was neatly divided with color-coded tabs. One red. One yellow. One green. She pointed to the green one. This section is just basic stuff, home titles, inheritance confirmation. Nothing scary. Then yellow. This is our joint equity clause. We didn't change anything, just updated it. Then she tapped the red tab. This is where we need your signature. I took the folder. Laid it flat on my lap. And started reading. Page 1, a familiar copy of the property agreement. My name. Amanda's name. All standard. Page 2, legal lingo, cohabitation structure, shared ownership. Page 3, something new. An addendum. Titled, Emergency Refinancing Authorization. I paused. Amanda smiled like a real estate agent. That just allows us to refinance if needed, without needing all 3 signatures each time. Just streamlines things. 3 signatures, I echoed. Yours, mine, Derek's, she said. I kept reading. The bottom of the page had 3 printed lines, each labeled with our names. 2 were already signed. Mine was blank. You signed for me, I said. No, she said too quickly. We just filled in the lines to keep it neat. Neat. Forgery now came gift-wrapped in convenience. I stared at my daughter. The girl I once taught to tie her shoes. The one who used to climb into my lap during thunderstorms and whisper, "Don't let the sky eat me." Now here she was, smiling, calm, pushing a pen across the coffee table. Just sign this one page, Dad. It's the last step. What loan are you applying for? She blinked. What? You and Derek. What loan? She faltered. Just for a moment. Just a possible restructure. Nothing set in stone. Then why do you need emergency authorization? Dad, she sighed, don't make this about paranoia. It's just easier. I handed her the folder. She didn't take it. I set it down on the coffee table, the pen on top. I'll think about it, I said. Her smile thinned. We already told the bank we'd have the papers by Monday. I didn't agree to that. You never say anything, Dad. That's the problem. You stall. You dodge. This isn't just your home anymore. It's not yours either. Her eyes flashed. We pay the mortgage. Because I gave you the down payment. That doesn't mean. You want my name. But not my voice. She stood. Maybe you'd rather live somewhere else if this house makes you feel so excluded. There it was. The sentence they'd been circling for weeks. I didn't argue. Didn't raise my voice. Just picked up the folder again. And ran my finger along the torn tab at the top. Martha would have asked, I said. Amanda's mouth tightened. I walked away. Not to sulk. Not to plan. But to copy every page of that folder. In the garage, under the old tarp that still smelled like motor oil and pine, I kept a small fireproof box. Inside, my will, Martha's letters, and now, a USB drive with scans of every document they'd tried to sneak past me. When I returned, the folder was gone from the table. The pen too. I didn't ask. I already knew. They'd take it to the bank. Submit my forged signature. Bet everything on the assumption that I'd be too old, too slow, or too sentimental to stop them. But what they didn't know. That page 2 had a hidden clause. One I had added a year ago when I rewrote the trust. A clause that froze all transfer powers if a forged entry was ever submitted. And I still had the original copy. That night, I slept in the recliner. The recliner they hated. The one Derek had called an eyesore. I kept the backup folder in my lap. Didn't dream. Didn't need to. Because I already knew how this would end. Not with yelling. Not with fists. But with paperwork. And when they'd show up Monday, smiling at the bank, they'd find the one signature they needed was already working against them. If you're still here, don't forget to subscribe, and comment your thoughts. The evening felt staged. Derek cooked dinner, steak, wine, cloth napkins. Amanda wore earrings. They both laughed louder than usual, like actors nailing a script they rehearsed behind my back. I didn't eat much. The food was fine. The silence underneath it wasn't. Halfway through, Derek raised his glass. To moving forward, he said, then turned to me. With everyone on the same page. Amanda didn't clink her glass. Just stared at her plate. I wiped my mouth and stood to clear my dish. That's when Derek dropped the real line. Look, he said casually, we've talked about it. If you're gonna live here, you need to start following some rules. I paused. The plate still in my hand. Amanda looked up, startled, but didn't stop him. You can't just float around like you own the place, he continued. TV's too loud. You never knock. You bring up Martha like she still runs this house. I stared at him. She built this house. Her hands are still in the walls. She's gone, he snapped. Amanda flinched. He kept going. This is our home now. You want to stay? You obey our way. I set the plate down without breaking eye contact. Your way, I echoed. Amanda finally spoke. Dad, maybe you should consider visiting Aunt Renee for a few weeks. Aunt Renee again. I'm not sick, I said. No one's saying that, she replied. Then why does everyone treat me like a ghost with male privileges? Derek chuckled bitterly. Because ghosts don't mess with legal documents behind our backs. I blinked. So he did know about the clause. Or suspected. You went into my folder, I said. Amanda looked confused. Derek didn't deny it. You had no right to add legal blocks. We're family. No, I said softly. We were family. Then you printed my name on a contract I never saw. He stood, pointed. This is what I mean. You're paranoid. Stubborn. Always the martyr. You want to live here? You follow my lead. Or leave. Amanda didn't stop him. Not even a hand on his arm. That silence was louder than the insult. He leaned in. It's not your home, it's our project now. There it was. The killer line. The house reduced to equity. A renovation. A stepping stone. I stepped back. Said nothing. Then turned to the side table. Opened the drawer. Pulled out the folder. Held it between both hands like a Bible that had seen war. I could feel where the cover had creased. Where Martha once pressed it flat, her fingers tracing every word of the trust. Every house, I said quietly, has a foundation. Derek rolled his eyes. Amanda looked like she wanted to disappear into her wine glass. But foundations crack, I continued. When you build on greed. Derek scoffed. Oh, save the sermon. I didn't respond. I walked to my room. Sat on the edge of the bed. Opened my closet. And reached for the brown leather suitcase tucked beneath old sweaters. It smelled like dust and cedar. The handle was cracked. The lock still worked. Martha once packed this for our anniversary trip to Montana. 30 years ago. Back when this house had laughter in the walls. I opened it. It was empty. And somehow, heavier than I remembered. I started folding shirts. One by one. Laid the folder flat at the bottom. then zipped it shut. I didn't leave that night. Not yet. But I needed them to know I could. That I was no longer trapped by guilt, history, or bloodlines. That their project had just lost its cornerstone. Amanda knocked softly an hour later. "Dad, we didn't mean for it to come out that way." "It did," I said without turning around. "Maybe we all need space. Maybe we need honesty." She paused. "Then, you're being cruel." I turned then. Slowly. Held up the folder. "This is the only thing I ever tried to give you." "Then give it," she whispered. I did. And I set it gently on the dresser. But before I walked away from her, from the room, from that moment, I made sure to fold the last page slightly. Just enough for her to see the clause title peeking out. Transfer invalidation triggered by forgery or coercion. Her eyes went wide. Then narrow. "You're sabotaging us." "No," I said. "I'm protecting myself." That night, I didn't sleep in my bed. I slept in the garage. Suitcase packed. Folder zipped inside. And a storm rolling in that wasn't in the forecast. The eggs were rubbery. Overcooked. Saltless. Amanda always used to ask me how I liked mine. Now she just placed the plate down like it was an obligation. No eye contact. No words. The chair across from me stayed empty. Derek's coffee sat untouched, steam curling above the mug like a warning. I chewed slowly. Each bite tasted more like cardboard than breakfast. On the counter, the battered legal folder sat folded under Amanda's college coffee mug, its cover wrinkled, corner soggy with condensation. A careless insult. I reached over and slid it out. The folder was warped now. Pages inside slightly bent. A coffee ring marked the corner of the property trust document, right over Martha's signature. I wiped it gently with the sleeve of my sweater. Like that could undo what they'd done. Amanda walked in behind me, hair still damp, keys in hand. "We'll be back around 3, she said, eyes on her phone. "Bank appointments at 11. I said nothing. Derek followed moments later, dressed like a man heading to war in a tailored suit and too much cologne. As he passed the kitchen table, he paused. "You don't have to look so betrayed," he said. "It's just paperwork." I didn't look at him. Everything starts with paperwork. That's how homes get stolen. He didn't respond. Just grabbed his travel mug and walked out. Amanda lingered at the door. "Dad," she said quietly, "don't do anything drastic." "I won't. But if the bank calls, please don't embarrass us." I stared at her. And she left. I finished my eggs in silence. No birds outside the window today. No Mr. Jenkins walking his dog. Even the wind felt quiet. I sat for a long time, just watching the folder like it might speak. And then I moved. I didn't take the suitcase. Not yet. I took the folder. Just that. Locked the house. Walked 3 blocks down. Turned left at the diner. And entered the office of a man named Carson Levy, estate lawyer, probate specialist, and quiet ally. He looked up from behind a stack of papers. "Been a while," he said. "I need to trigger a clause," I replied, placing the folder on his desk. His eyebrows rose. "Forgery?" I nodded. He opened the folder carefully. "You kept the original." "Smart." He flipped through it, stopping at the cosign page with Amanda's forged entry. "Yep. That's an illegal prefill." He kept going. Reached the final clause I'd buried beneath pages of standard language. Section 19B, ownership freeze in case of coercion, misrepresentation, or duplicate authorization attempts. He smiled faintly. "You always were 3 steps ahead." I nodded. I want it active today. He pulled out a stamp. Consider it done. By noon, I sat back at the diner, folder now marked with a county seal stamped in blue. I placed it beside my coffee. Ordered pancakes I didn't want. Just needed a place to breathe. The waitress, Linda, same girl who once baked Martha's pie recipe for the church fundraiser, looked at me differently today. "You okay, Mr. Green?" she asked. "Getting there," I replied. She poured the coffee. "Heard something about Amanda at the bank this morning." I raised an eyebrow. "Someone said she was crying." She left it there. Didn't ask more. Just walked away. But the whispers had started. And they'd only grow louder. That was the second fallout. The moment truth slipped out of homes and into streets, bank lobbies, and lunch counters. I stepped outside just as Pastor Rick approached, grocery bag in hand. He gave me a long look. Then nodded. "You held your ground," he said. I didn't reply. He pointed at the folder. "That looks official." "It is." He smiled sadly. "Good." Then, I heard Amanda and Derek tried to leverage equity that wasn't theirs. That true? I didn't answer. Didn't have to. Truth has a way of leaking even when you hold it close. He adjusted his hat. "You coming Sunday?" "I'll be there." "Bring that folder," he said, half smiling. "Some folks need to see it." I didn't laugh. But for the first time in weeks, my chest felt lighter. When I got home, the house was empty. I placed the sealed folder back on the mantel, where it once sat like a symbol of trust. Now it sat like a warning. 2 hours later, they stormed in. Amanda's eyes were red. Derek's face was pale. "You filed a freeze," he hissed. Amanda said nothing. Just stared at the floor. "You sabotaged your own family." I didn't stand. Didn't raise my voice. I pointed at the folder. "Read the clause. Page 19b. "I already did," he growled. "You think this ends it?" "No," I said. "But it starts something." "What?" "Boundaries." Amanda stepped forward. "You didn't have to humiliate us." People were staring at the bank. The teller looked at us like criminals. "You told them I was mentally unfit," I replied. She opened her mouth, then closed it. "I never signed anything," I said. "But you did." And now that folder wasn't just a bundle of papers. It was evidence. Stamped. Sealed. And ready for war. By sunrise, I was sitting at the kitchen table with my phone in one hand and a bitter mug of black coffee in the other. The folder sat beside me, closed now, sealed by the blue county stamp and something even stronger, my decision. This was no longer about teaching them a lesson. It was about restoring order. I opened my notebook, an old leather one Martha had gifted me on my 60th birthday. Inside were handwritten records, account numbers, billing dates, passcodes no one else knew. I dialed the first number. "Good morning, you've reached Riverbank Insurance. How can I assist you?" "Yes, I'd like to cancel all co-authorized users from my homeowner's policy." Immediate effect. "Of course. May I ask why?" "They no longer live here," I said flatly. Pause. Click. Done. Next call, bank. Removed Amanda's name from the trust-linked checking account. Then the joint auto payment I'd set up for their utilities, snipped clean. I even called the phone company. "Hi, I'd like to disable the 2 sublines attached to my family plan." "Yes, the ones ending in 8845 and 2263. Amanda's and Derek's numbers. Each strike wasn't a war drum, it was a scalpel. Precise. Clean. Irrevocable. By 10 a.m., their financial lifelines, those they'd built on my goodwill, were severed. Then I opened my own new account under a fresh name. Not hidden. Not spiteful. Just private. No more auto drafts. No more coverage extensions. No more silent charity. I scanned and uploaded the folder into my new digital vault. Each document, each clause, tagged and time-stamped. The weight didn't disappear from my shoulders, but it shifted, from burden to armor. At 11:12 a.m., the first voicemail arrived. It was Amanda. "Dad, hey. We just got an alert from the bank, says one of the accounts is restricted. Can you call me?" 10 minutes later, Derek. "You really think this is mature? You think this is smart? You're gonna tank your own credit along with ours." Another hour passed. More calls. Then texts. "Amanda again, we just got a notice about the power bill. Why is the card declined? Derek, you're hurting your daughter, not just me. Grow up." I didn't reply. I didn't need to. Let the silence speak now. Around 2 p.m., there was a knock. I was sitting on the porch with the folder in my lap, reviewing every step. Amanda stood there, eyes wide, cheeks flushed. "You canceled everything." I nodded. "No warning. No heads up." "I tried to fill a prescription, Dad." "Sounds like a good reason to apply for your own policy," I replied. She blinked. "Are you serious? You told Pastor Rick I was unfit. Mentally slipping. That I shouldn't be allowed to manage my own affairs." "I never." "He told me." Her voice cracked. "I didn't mean it like that. I didn't think you'd fight back?" I asked. She looked away. I tapped the folder. "This isn't punishment. It's correction." "You're our father," she said. I was. "Before you tried to take what wasn't yours. You're being cruel." "No," I said. "Cruel would have been erasing your name the way you tried to erase mine." I stood. Walked past her. She didn't follow. That night, Derek called. "No pleasantries. You like this little game?" he barked. "You think humiliating us makes you righteous?" "No," I said. "But it makes me free. You think we won't fight back?" "You already did," I replied. "Now it's my turn." I hung up. Went to the kitchen. Pulled the folder from the table. Slid it into the old drawer beside Martha's recipe cards. Tucked it between peach cobbler and holiday cider. She always said the safest place was where no one thinks to look. Then I sat in my recliner and turned on the TV. Volume just loud enough to echo down the hall. Because I wasn't a ghost anymore. I was the landlord of their reality. By morning, I knew what was coming. Not an apology. Not regret. Just backlash. And I'd already locked the door. "Tell me, what would you do in this situation?" "I'd love to know." The first voicemail came just after sunrise. Amanda's voice was cracked from crying, or trying to sound like she had. "Dad, please. The gas company said the payment was reversed. We have a toddler, we need heat." There was no toddler. There was no gas emergency. Just manipulation dressed as urgency. I poured my coffee slowly, stared out the kitchen window, and let her words play again. And again. And again. Because they weren't apologies. They were scripts. By noon, 6 more came in. One from Derek: "You've made your point. But now you're just being vindictive." One from Amanda again: "Can we at least talk about the phone plan? I have interviews this week." Another from Derek, angrier: "You touched the house deed, and I swear." Click. Blocked. I changed the locks that morning. Quietly. Hired a local guy, someone who knew the house like the back of his hand because he used to deliver packages here when Amanda was still in high school. "Everything all right?" he asked, glancing at my face as he worked. "Just getting the doors to finally match the key," I said. He nodded slowly. "Good time for that." By 3 p.m., the doorbell rang. I didn't answer. Not right away. I watched from the side window as Amanda stood there, no coat, holding a small cardboard box. Inside, 2 coffee mugs, a couple books, a charger cord, and something shiny wrapped in cloth. A necklace I once gave her mother. She wasn't crying. She wasn't pleading. She was posturing. I opened the door halfway. "I'm not here to fight," she said. "I just want to talk." "You've already talked. Now you're reacting." She held up the box. "These were in our room. I figured they belonged to you." I glanced at the contents, saw the edge of the legal folder wedged beneath the charger. "Looking for this?" I asked, pulling the real one from under my arm. Her face twitched. "You took it with you?" "I never left it. I thought we agreed to share everything." "You printed my name," I replied. "That ended sharing." She stepped forward. "We can't afford this war. You started it." She looked down. "I know." That was the first honest thing she'd said in weeks. But it wasn't enough. Because right then, Derek's car pulled up. And he didn't get out. He just rolled down the window. "You done begging?" he called out. Amanda stiffened. And I knew, this wasn't her reconciliation. It was his tactic. "Take the box," I said, handing it back to her. She held it a moment longer than she should have. Then took it. And left. That night, I listened to the voicemails again. A new one from Amanda: "You changed the will, didn't you? That's what this is about. That folder." And another from Derek: "The neighbors are talking. Pastor Rick pulled me aside at the store. You proud of this circus?" The sound of desperation, masquerading as rage. That's when I realized something. They weren't just mad about the money. They were mad about the silence. The way I refused to scream. The way I walked away with dignity instead of breaking down. That's what scared them. Not my folder. Not the locks. Not the canceled cards. But the stillness. I sat at the kitchen table again, right where it all began. The folder rested beside my cup. Pages fanned slightly open, exposing the clause titles like chapter headings in a revenge novel. And then came the knock. Sharp. Repetitive. I opened the door. A police officer stood there. Not aggressive. Not accusatory. "Sir," he said, "we had a call from a family member. Said you might be unwell. Possibly confused." I didn't flinch. Just stepped aside and gestured to the table. He walked in slowly. Saw the folder. Saw the bank documents. The notarized trust. The blue county seal. He read. Then turned to me. "You're sharp as a blade," he muttered. "Want me to make a report?" I nodded. He did. Amanda watched from the driveway, arms crossed. Derek stood beside her, his face pale. They knew. They'd tried to weaponize concern. But the paper beat them again. When the officer left, he shook my hand. "Most folks don't keep records this clean," he said. "Martha taught me," I replied. Said the quietest man wins when he writes everything down. And now, my silence wasn't fear. It was ammunition. Because every voicemail they left, I saved them all. And I hadn't even begun to use them yet. The motel was nothing special: faded carpet, chipped lobby tiles, coffee that tasted like it remembered beans from a past life. But it was neutral ground. The place I chose for the meeting. No family photos. No walls that remembered. Just 4 chairs. 1 table. And a manager who kept peeking from behind the counter, pretending not to listen. I sat at the far end of the room, folder in front of me like a loaded weapon. Amanda entered first. Hair tied back. Face pale. Hands clenched around a black purse she didn't need. Derek followed, dragging his ego like luggage he refused to check. They sat without speaking. I didn't offer coffee. Didn't smile. Just opened the folder, slowly, like it was sacred. So, I said. Let's talk about theft. Amanda looked up. Dad, please. Forgery is theft, I interrupted. Coercion is theft. Lying to a pastor to frame your own father? That's character theft. Derek leaned forward. We didn't steal. We leveraged. I laughed once. Hard. Short. You forged a signature and tried to extract equity from a trust that wasn't yours. He opened his mouth, but Amanda grabbed his arm. Stop, she whispered. She turned to me. Dad, we messed up. I see that now. I do. But going public like this, Pastor Rick, the bank teller, now the police, it's destroying us. You destroyed yourselves, I said. All I did was stop helping. We're being ostracized, she said. Consequences, I replied. Not exile. Derek slammed his palm on the table. You're enjoying this. That's the sick part. I slid a manila envelope across to him. Inside, printouts of their voicemails. Transcribed. Time-stamped. Amanda stared at it like it might explode. Copies go to my lawyer this week, I said. Unless I receive a notarized retraction of your POA filing, your joint equity claim, and a written apology addressed to the board of the church. Amanda's eyes welled. Derek said nothing. Because they both knew, I meant it. But that's not the twist, I added, tapping the folder. They both looked up. 3 weeks ago, I transferred ownership of the house into a living trust. 1 beneficiary. Not both. Just 1. Derek blinked. You changed the deed? Legally. Irrevocably. The house is no longer co-owned. Amanda leaned forward. Who's the beneficiary? I leaned back. Smiled. TBD, I said. To be determined, she whispered. Maybe a veterans' charity, I shrugged. Maybe a local library. Maybe nobody. Derek was shaking his head. You wouldn't. Already did. Amanda's voice cracked. You're leaving us nothing. I offered you everything, I said, tapping the folder again. You wanted control instead. There was silence then. Not the thick silence of tension. But the quiet collapse of entitlement. They weren't just losing access. They were losing image. Outside the motel window, I saw 2 familiar faces walk past, neighbors from church. The Petersons. They paused, looked through the glass. Amanda turned away. Derek stood. We're done here. No, I said. You are. He stormed out. Amanda stayed seated. Her eyes fell on the folder. She didn't reach for it this time. Why here? She asked softly. This motel? I replied. It's where I stayed the night your mother died. She blinked. I didn't know that. You were busy. Derek had a client dinner. I didn't want to be in the house that night. Tears slid down her cheek. I miss her, she whispered. I do too, I said. She stood slowly. No more war, Dad, she said. That depends, I replied. No more lies? She nodded. Then walked out. Left the envelope on the table. Didn't take her copy. Because she knew. That copy wasn't hers anymore. That night, the town knew. Not because I told them. But because silence spreads like fire when it finally finds oxygen. And my folder? It had just become smoke. I wore my best flannel shirt. Not for vanity. Not for nostalgia. For power. Because it was the one Martha stitched a patch into, back when the elbow tore and I nearly tossed it. She said, "Don't throw away things that can still hold warmth." That morning, I wore it like armor. I walked into the county clerk's office just after opening. Folder under my arm. Stamped, organized, battle-ready. The receptionist, a young woman named Janie, greeted me with a smile she didn't quite mean. "Filing today, Mr. Green?" "Counterfiling," I corrected. She blinked. "Excuse me?" I handed her the folder, open to the notarized document, petition for ownership revocation based on fraudulent intent. Then the second sheet, a printed transcript of Derek's voicemail. And the third, a letter from Pastor Rick, confirming their slander attempt to label me mentally unfit for personal gain. Janie's smile faded into professional neutrality. She took the pages. Began scanning. "You're moving fast," she said. "Because they already did," I replied. Within minutes, the filings were time-stamped. A case number was assigned. And a hearing was scheduled, 10 business days from now. "They'll be notified by certified letter," Janie added. "I hope they read it out loud," I muttered. I left the clerk's office, went straight to Carson Levy's downtown building. His assistant ushered me in like they'd been waiting. "2 calls from them already," Carson said without looking up. Derek was shouting. Amanda was quieter. She always is when she's cornered. I told them any communication has to come through me now. "Good." He slid a paper across the desk. "This is the restraining clause we discussed. It'll block any transfer, refinance, or equity move without your explicit written approval for the next 24 months. I signed it. No hesitation. Not even when I saw Amanda's name under the "Affected Parties" section. Carson leaned back. "You know, not many fathers go this far." "I didn't go far," I said. "I just stopped staying still." That afternoon, I walked through town. People looked at me differently now. Some nodded with new respect. Some avoided my eyes. Gossip works like smoke, it spreads without being seen, but it leaves behind the scent. At the post office, the clerk whispered, "Heard about the house mess. Shame how kids turn." At the hardware store, Mr. Duffy gave me a firm handshake and said, "Glad someone's finally standing up to this modern greed." By the time I returned home, a certified envelope was already sticking out of the mailbox. Amanda's name in the return address. I didn't open it. Not right away. I set it beside the stove, brewed a pot of coffee, then sat down with the folder again. I added a new section. Labeled it, "Ongoing Legal Defense, Green vs. Green." It stung to write. But the truth does that. I opened the envelope finally. Inside, a letter. Half apology, half negotiation. "Dear Dad," it began. "We didn't intend to hurt you. We panicked. Derek lost a major client. Bills stacked up. The idea of refinancing felt like survival. Then came the ask. If there's still a way to repair this, maybe we can meet, just the two of us. No lawyers. No threats." I stared at the sentence for a long time. Then I added the letter to the folder. Filed it under, "Sentiment versus Strategy." That evening, Carson called. "You've got leverage now." The court will see the filing, the recordings, the timeline, it's all clean. Good. But I need to ask, what do you actually want from them? An apology? Reinstatement? Control? I looked at the folder. At the patch on my sleeve. At Martha's framed recipe beside the kitchen window. I want dignity, I said. Theirs is gone. I'm just making sure mine stays upright. And when they show up in court 10 days from now, it won't be just to face me. It'll be to face every page they signed with arrogance. And every page I signed with intent. It started with the car. Derek's precious SUV, the one he bragged about financing under executive tier, wasn't in the driveway anymore. Amanda said it was at the shop. But 2 days later, Mrs. Langley, the florist down the block, mentioned seeing Derek arguing with a tow truck driver outside the shopping plaza. He kept yelling about miscommunication, she said, handing me my change. But the guy just hooked the wheels and drove off. I nodded, folded the receipt, and walked out. The walls were cracking. Not my walls, theirs. The illusion they wore like pressed suits was finally wrinkling. That afternoon, I got a letter from the bank. A formal notice confirming my freeze authorization had locked any equity moves. Attached was a copy of an attempted submission, Derek's name, dated 3 days prior. They had tried again. Even after the motel. Even after the county filings. Desperation doesn't learn, it just gets louder. At church on Sunday, Amanda arrived late. Alone. She sat 2 rows behind me, hands clenched in her lap. Pastor Rick's sermon wasn't even subtle. Some houses fall not from storms, but from rot within the beams. I didn't look back. But I heard her leave before the final hymn. That night, I got another voicemail. Her voice, raw and exposed. Dad, Derek's business is under audit. The IRS flagged something. We're not sure what to do. Not, I'm sorry. Not, you were right. Just fear, knocking in borrowed shoes. I didn't reply. I went to the living room instead. Opened the drawer. Took out the folder. Slid a new page in, this one labeled, IRS flag notice, Amanda confirms audit, VM transcript attached. I wasn't collecting documents anymore. I was building a firewall. On Tuesday, I ran into Jerry, the manager of the diner where Amanda used to waitress in college. He pulled me aside. She stopped by last week, he said. Asked if we were hiring. I kept my face still. Didn't say much, he added. But she looked lost. It hit me then. She wasn't just losing money. She was losing identity. For years, she'd lived in the frame Derek built, perfect wife, stable home, 2 vacations a year. A portfolio instead of a personality. Now the frame was cracking, and she had no tools of her own. Later that day, the doorbell rang. Not Amanda. Not Derek. A man in a blazer. Holding a clipboard. Mr. Green, he asked. I'm with First Mutual. Derek applied for a joint-use lien last month. Your name was attached as collateral. My stomach turned cold. I pointed to the porch chair. Wait there. I went inside. Pulled the folder. Turned to the section labeled, Previous Authorization Attempts. Handed him the paperwork. He read. Scanned the county seal. Saw the notarized revocation form. His eyebrows lifted. Looks like he didn't mention this. No, I said. He doesn't mention a lot of things. The man nodded. We'll be following up. He walked back to his car. I sat down. Looked at the folder in my lap. For the first time in months, I felt tired, not with sadness, but with clarity. Their facade wasn't falling in a storm. It was rotting from the inside out. And now, every stranger they'd used to build that illusion, bankers, lenders, community leaders, was seeing the exposed wood beneath the paint. That night, Amanda knocked. Not banging. Not shouting. Just a gentle rhythm. I opened the door. She looked smaller. Makeup faded. Shoulders hunched. "I made chili," she said. "The way Mom used to." I didn't reply. She held out the container. "I didn't put your name on anything," she added. "Not this time." I took the chili. Didn't thank her. Didn't invite her in. Just nodded and closed the door. Because sometimes, love doesn't mean hugging someone back. Sometimes it means letting them feel the cold so they never mistake you for warmth they haven't earned. And as the chili cooled on the counter, I knew the house wasn't the only thing Derek was losing. He was losing her. And for the first time, I wasn't going to stop it. The diner was loud with the hum of late lunch. Forks clinked. Booths buzzed. Someone's baby wailed softly from the corner table. I sat at the counter with my usual meatloaf, sweet tea, slice of lemon pie I didn't really want. The folder rested on the stool beside me. It always came with me now. Not for show. For readiness. I'd stopped hoping for peace. I started preparing for interruption. It came at 1:17 p.m. Derek. Storming in like he still owned time. People looked up. Conversations dipped. He scanned the room, spotted me, and walked fast, jaw tight, fists tighter. Linda, the waitress, stepped back from the counter. He didn't sit. Just loomed. "You turned her against me," he hissed. I didn't answer. "You poisoned her. Amanda's talking about separation." Still, I said nothing. "She cried last night," he added. "Said she didn't recognize herself." I cut a bite of meatloaf. "Maybe she's finally seeing clearly." "You smug bastard." I stood. Slowly. And set my fork down. Then I reached for the folder. Opened it to a page I'd marked with a torn napkin, Derek's failed loan attempt. Attached to it was a photo of the SUV being repossessed, sent to me anonymously. Probably by someone who worked for the tow yard. I slid the page across the counter toward him. "Don't mistake consequence for cruelty," I said quietly. "You took. You lied. Now it's settling." He stared at the page. Then at me. Then around. That's when he noticed the room. The cook had stopped moving behind the counter. Linda's notepad hovered in midair. The Peterson twins sat frozen with their chicken tenders. Nobody was clapping. But everyone was watching. "I loved her," he said, softer now. "And I still do," I replied. "That's why I didn't press charges." His face twisted. "But love," I added, "doesn't mean silence. It doesn't mean surrender." He looked at the folder again, at his own failure staring back in printed ink. Then turned. And walked out. No one followed. Linda returned to her station, clearing her throat. "You okay, Mr. Green?" "I'm fine." She hesitated, then leaned closer. "Most folks in here, they're proud of you." I nodded. Didn't smile. Just folded the folder shut and placed it on my lap like a finished book. When I walked out 10 minutes later, Amanda was parked across the street. She didn't wave. Didn't roll down the window. But I saw it in her eyes, something between regret and relief. Maybe for the first time, she wasn't mourning what she lost. She was mourning what she tried to steal. Back home, I placed the folder back in the drawer beside Martha's recipe cards. But this time, I paused. Pulled out the chili container she'd brought over. Still sealed. Still cold. I opened it. Smelled it. Then spooned it into a bowl. And as it heated on the stove, I knew something had changed. Not forgiveness. Not yet. But understanding. The kind that only comes after enough people watch you take your stand. And when I tasted that chili, it didn't taste like betrayal. It tasted like the first step back. Burnt around the edges. But finally warming from the inside. The last document I added to the folder was printed on thick, cream-colored paper. Gold-embossed seal. Notarized. Final. It wasn't just another filing. It was a declaration. Amendment to last will and testament, full disinheritance clause activated. Amanda and Derek's names had been there for 20 years. Listed with trust, affection, and the belief that legacy was built, not borrowed. But now? Now the space where their names once were, was blank. Below it, a single line. This property and all assets attached shall be transferred to a foundation serving veteran widows and community caretakers. That was Martha's dream, long before Amanda fell in love with control. She used to say, "Let's leave behind something that can't be stolen." And that's exactly what I was doing. The final strike didn't come in a courtroom or a bank lobby. It came in the same church where Amanda was baptized. Sunday morning. Packed pews. Pastor Rick at the pulpit. The sun glowing through stained glass like divine permission. When he asked for testimonies, I stood. Slowly. Deliberately. Folder in hand. I didn't need to shout. Didn't need to accuse. I simply walked to the front, opened the folder on the communion table, and pulled out 3 documents. The forged signature page. The equity freeze clause. The updated will. And I spoke. My daughter tried to take my home. Murmurs. Gasps. A gasp from the third row. Mrs. Pendleton clutched her pearls like it was a soap opera. She said the best gift I could give was dying. Now silence. Heavy. Palpable. I looked directly at Amanda, who sat stiff in the 4th pew. She made her choice, I said. So I've made mine. Then I turned the folder toward the crowd. Everything in this file, every attempt, every lie, every withdrawal, is documented. And now, donated. This home, and everything it stood for, goes to those who understand sacrifice. A beat of stunned silence. Then Pastor Rick stepped forward, placed a hand on the folder. "We've never witnessed something like this," he said. "But let it be known, truth is its own kind of offering." I nodded. Walked back to my seat. Never looked at Amanda again. After service, they didn't approach. Not Amanda. Not Derek. But everyone else did. Neighbors I hadn't spoken to in months. Men who remembered Martha's pie contests. Women who used to ask for Amanda's recipe cards. All of them shook my hand. Not with pity. With respect. At home, I opened the drawer one last time. Slid the folder inside. Then I pulled out the key. The one Amanda never asked about. The one Derek assumed was just for the garage. It wasn't. It belonged to the safety deposit box where I'd stored the original deed. Now reassigned. Now sealed. Now named under a foundation I'd built quietly over the last 2 weeks. Martha's Table. A non-profit for caregivers in crisis. I called Carson the next morning. "It's done," I said. He understood. Derek had sent a final voicemail that night, something bitter, venom-spat, threatening legal action for emotional damage. Amanda didn't say anything. Didn't have to. Because the strongest revenge wasn't cutting off their money. It was cutting off their entitlement. It was closing the folder forever, and making sure the final fold didn't have their name on it. And now that the papers were signed, the keys reassigned, and the house unshakably mine. They finally understood. This wasn't just revenge. It was reclamation. Of my home. Of my name. Of my peace. They didn't knock this time. They waited. 2 shadows on my front step at sunset. Amanda stood with both hands clasped. Derek behind her, arms folded like he could still bluff his way back into dignity. I didn't invite them in. Didn't move from the doorway. She spoke first. We just want to talk. I said nothing. She continued. We're not asking for the house. Not anymore. Derek's jaw flexed, but he didn't interrupt. Amanda's voice wavered. I just want you to hear us. I stepped aside, not out of kindness, but to see if they'd walk in without being asked. They didn't. Small grace. We sat in the living room. Same room where Martha once strung popcorn garlands for Christmas. Where Amanda once fell asleep on my chest watching Homeward Bound. She looked around like it was foreign territory now. Dad, she said slowly, we're scared. Derek tensed, but she pushed forward. We made decisions out of panic. We messed up. But please, don't leave us with nothing. I looked at her. Not the way a father looks at his daughter. The way a man looks at someone standing in the ruins they helped build. You left me with nothing, I said. And I still didn't try to steal from you. She winced. Derek finally spoke. If this is about control, fine. Keep the house. Keep the trust. But we're drowning. You made your point. Isn't that enough? I leaned back. Let the silence swell. Then reached under the side table and pulled out the folder one last time. They both flinched when they saw it. I don't need revenge anymore, I said. But I do need clarity. Amanda's eyes filled. We're sorry. Derek added, truly. I believe that, I said. But sorry isn't a refund. They looked confused. Everything you took, time, trust, safety, I don't get that back. I live alone now. I answer questions at church with my head high, but my home is quiet. That folder became my spine because you tried to break it. Amanda wiped her eyes. So what now? I opened the folder. Turned to the final page. A check. Made out to them. But not for the house. Not for the deed. For 2 months of rent. First and last. Enough to start over, but not enough to settle. Charity, I said. Not inheritance. Derek opened his mouth. Amanda touched his arm. He closed it. She took the check with shaking hands. Then looked at me with something I hadn't seen in a long time. Not fear. Not pity. But shame. I'll make something good with this, she whispered. I hope so, I replied. They stood. Walked to the door. And before she left, Amanda turned. Mom she would have hated this. No, I said. She would have hated what you did. But she would have loved what I did next. The door closed behind them. I walked to the kitchen. Set the folder on the counter. Opened it one final time. And removed the checked carbon. Slid it under the recipe card labeled peach cobbler. Then closed the drawer for good. They walked away without looking back. And I stood in the kitchen. Not victorious. Not vengeful. Just clean. Like rain had finally come. The letter came 2 weeks later. Typed on white cardstock. Return address, Martha's Table Foundation. Inside was a formal update from the board. The grant had been approved, the first caregiver housing scholarship was funded, and the pilot program would begin next month. I sat on the porch and read the letter twice. Then once more, aloud, to the wind, to the silence, to the porch swing that still creaked when no one touched it. They'd named the scholarship after her. The Martha Green Caregiver Dignity Award. I folded the letter and tucked it into the back of the folder, behind every page that had once felt like war. Now it felt like peace. That Sunday, the church bulletin had a new edition. Printed in bold, center page. We celebrate Mr. Green's generous donation to the Community Foundation. His home, once at the center of family dispute, now symbolizes restoration and care. The Lord watches those who do justice, loves those who speak truth. Pastor Rick didn't mention Amanda or Derek by name. But he didn't have to. Everyone knew. And in a small town, dignity spreads louder than gossip when it's earned back in silence. After the service, I stood outside with my coffee, no cream, just the way I liked it. Mrs. Langley approached first. "You turned a mess into something holy, Mr. Green." Then Jerry from the diner. "Your daughter came in last night. Said she's applying to nursing school." I nodded but didn't reply. Let the moment breathe. Let people come to their own conclusions. Because some truths don't need banners or microphones. They just need time. At home, the house felt full again. Not with people. But with purpose. I vacuumed the rugs. Washed the baseboards. Reorganized Martha's recipe cards in alphabetical order. When I reached for the folder one last time, I didn't flinch. Didn't brace. I carried it to the fireplace. Opened it gently. Page by page, I reviewed what used to be my armor. And then I did something I hadn't planned. I pulled the folder apart. Carefully. Lovingly. And fed each sheet into the fire. Not out of rage. But out of release. The forged signature, the equity freeze, the revised will. One by one, they curled into flame, turned to ash, and vanished. All except one. The final page. The dedication letter from Martha's table. I kept that. Framed it. Hung it in the hallway where their wedding photo once hung. Because that was the last chapter. Not the court filings. Not the diner showdowns. But legacy. Amanda sent one final letter. No money requests. No veiled appeals. Just 6 words in her shaky script. "Thank you for saving my name." I folded it. Slid it behind the framed letter from the foundation. Then brewed a fresh pot of coffee. The house was quiet. But not the empty kind. The dignified kind. The kind Martha always loved. And as the sun stretched across the hardwood floors, I knew this story wouldn't end in a will. It would end in worth. Because the folder didn't bury me. It saved me. And when I finally closed it, I did so with a steady hand. And a name they'd never take again. If this story struck a chord with you, tell me, what would you have done? And if you've ever had to fight for your own dignity, you're not alone. I see you. We all do.